This is this shot, right? Only then, what are you going to move around another master before you get in closer?
Oh no, this sequence right here.
The world believes in aliens, but aliens are simply fallen angels posing as outer space ETs to deceive the public.
99.386% of the population wouldn't believe this conversation, and the rest are working for us.
Welcome back. My name is Renee, and this is Highly Motivated, a channel where we check out different things that I find interesting, and hopefully you will too. Today, we are going to be discussing NASA, and we're going to be talking about the idea that it was created as a tool for deception from day one. If you're new here, do me a favor, subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so that you're always notified when I upload a new video. And everyone, do me a favor and hit the like button. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, interestingly, NASA means to deceive in Hebrew. And their logo itself has the serpent tongue right in it. So, I mean, doesn't that tell you who's behind it? Let's get started with the first video.
The world believes in aliens, but aliens are simply fallen angels posing as outer space ETs to deceive the public. Let's speak about the biblical prophet Elijah's encounter and how this matches up with Western pop culture's UFO abduction stories. Kings 2 verse 11 says, and I quote, "As they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them, and Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind." Now let's break this encounter down piece by piece. What is a chariot of fire? Well, firstly, understand that Elijah lived in a time where technology didn't exist. Elijah was trying his best to explain the advanced forms of technology these angels were displaying. So Elijah says, chariot, because this was the only form of transportation he was familiar with. So Elijah's seen some type of vehicle that he best explained in his own words as a chariot of fire. Elijah was explaining this advanced vehicle in primitive words. Elijah calling this a chariot of fire implies that this vehicle had some kind of fire-based propulsion system similar to how a rocket ship's propulsion system emits flames. Now that we broke down what a chariot of fire is, let's dive into how Elijah was taken up into a whirlwind. This sounds very similar to a modern-day UFO abduction. Many UFO abduction stories describe how the abductee seen a UFO and then was levitated into the craft from this beam. We all seen the movies displaying this very sight. God sent fallen angels to this earth and they're still here. Our ancestors encountered these fallen angels and worshipped them as false gods. We must remember that angels are not human. But with this alien agenda running rampant, angels can easily be confused as so-called aliens.
Yes. And I really do believe that it is part of a deception to try to hide the existence of demons and angels. Now, this is supposed to be actual audio and video from the United States moon landing. Now, if this is real, it just sounds like one giant cluster F, if you know what I'm saying.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap. So, I guess you want to do it again. Okay.
Cut.
Marker?
Right now, Jim, that was better. Forget it. Wait a minute.
Look at that ratchety little thing.
There's another spectacular view. The pilot who missed the crater. Watch out. Watch out, John. Action.
Let's say it's another one to Fred. I think that's awfully good.
Did they use slapsticks on this one? Be a mic tap hit.
Oh, wow.
Action.
And the cameras, guys, the cameras were not special cameras. They were just regular old cameras that anybody could buy. Nice wind.
Head slate. Go on ahead.
You didn't land there. You landed in the field. Whoa.
That's definitely a set.
Hail slate coming up right now.
Right now, Jim, that was better.
You know, the funny thing is there's going to be people who are like, oh, they just had to film that for some B-roll stuff, for like commercials, you know?
Our rehearsal, guys. All right, this is just rehearsal. Ready? And action.
Altitude's a little high.
Look at that.
Pitch forward, got a really good view of the
You're
landing
looking
site.
great. Coming up 9 minutes. Roger, understand. Go for landing. 3,000 feet.
Peter has put a mark back there where he wants you to land.
What's it look like?
5.5 pounds.
What it would look like. You hear that?
Command override off. Engine arm off.
We're home.
413 is in.
Man on the moon.
Okay.
That thing looks about as well put together as that submarine. Probably had the same kind of controller.
Ready? And action. What do you think?
Well, it's not a good idea, but what were you gonna do?
Right now, Jim, that was better.
Forget it. Wait a minute. You know what I'm saying?
This is this shot, right? Only then, what are you going to move around another master before you get in closer?
Oh no, this sequence right here. Now I'm moving
Yes.
to a two-shot view that picks it up from there, and then moving into a four-shot that comes back from there.
Uh-huh.
I think as the scene progresses, we're going around.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you can divorce this conversation from that. I forget it just came from 5 solid minutes of this.
They're discussing the shot
We would react to
of
seeing
the
this.
moon landing.
Have you had a good pick?
Look at that.
Anyway, Dad was one of 3 guards that guarded the inside of the front entrance. There was a list of 15 people who could enter. No one else was allowed by order of President Johnson. Neil Armstrong, Edwin Alden, Werner von Braun, Robert Emenegger, Gene Kranz, James Webb, Joe Kerwin, Dr. Thomas Paine, Glenn Looney, Dr. Christopher Kraft,
Stanley Kubrick. Bet you Stanley Kubrick was one of them.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap.
And one giant lie. It kind of reminds me of what just happened. Check out my short that I posted about the moon landing in India. It's the picture is, it's so realistic. Next up, we have a woman who has claimed to have found the only true map of the Earth.
Exposing the only true map of the Earth.
Alright, before we go any further, I have to give a disclaimer so this does not get taken down. This video was made strictly for entertainment purposes only. Nothing in this video should be considered factual. We simply point out patterns and things that we notice. Matter of fact, let's just go ahead and say the whole damn video is scripted. Alright, now that we've satisfied the guidelines, let's get into it. Welcome to history class. My name is Katie, and today I will be your teacher. But don't worry, I'm going to teach you about the true history of our world. You know, our hidden history. The history that they don't teach you about in the history books or in school. I bet a lot of you didn't know that you have gone your entire lives without seeing a real representation of our Earth in a map. Yeah, you heard me correctly. I am willing to guarantee that regardless of your age, you have lived up until this point without seeing a actual representation of the Earth that we live in, represented in any type of map. And that's because every map that the government gives us is either distorted or messed with. Yet there has been an actual map that has depicted an actual true image of the Earth that we all live on. And it has been directly above our heads for our entire lives. Only problem is all of us are too distracted with our phones to actually look up. This is the moon that we look at every day. Only thing is, it probably has never occurred to you that in order to understand the Earth that we live on, all you need to do is look at the moon. I will explain to you now what it is exactly that you are looking at and how come you don't see it. The surface image of the moon contains a map of the Earth. In fact, it seems to be the only true map that we have ever been given. It is mirrored, distorted, and stretched. However, it is beyond a shadow of a doubt a reflection of the map of the Earth, depicting all of the continents and their right size proportions. It takes a little while for you to adjust your mind to be able to see it, because you are trying to reprogram an entire life of indoctrination. But once you see it, it is undeniable. And you may even realize that this is not the first time that you are seeing this map depicted. The UN has been using this map as their official logo for a very long time. Someone isn't telling us the truth. While studying the moon map, a lot of people have noticed that it depicts extra land masses that are not accounted for in our 2023 updated Earth map. These extra land masses account for the lost civilizations known as Atlantis and Lemuria. It is definitely a very interesting bit of history that I can guarantee that you were not taught as a child, or even as a young adult. And this concludes today's hidden history lesson. Please let us know your thoughts and opinions about this video in the comment section.
See, that is nuts. Eden has to be somewhere, and I can't imagine that the UN would want to use a completely fake map for their logo, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense either. I believe that there's really kind of only north in the center, right? And all compasses only point to north. It's magnetic north, right? And then the outside of the circular plane is south and the center is north. And that's just how it makes sense to me. Here we have some of the deceptions that were planned ahead of time for us, according to Wernher von Braun.
The strategy that Wernher von Braun taught me was that first the Russians are going to be considered to be the enemy. In fact, when I met him in '74, they were the enemy, the identified enemy. We were told that they had killer satellites. We were told that they were coming to get us and control us, the dirty commies, that whole story. First, the Russians were the enemy against whom we're going to build space-based weapons. Then terrorists would be identified, and that was soon to follow. We heard a lot about terrorism. Then we were going to identify third world country crazies. We now call them nations of concern. But he said that would be the third enemy against whom we would be needing to build space-based weapons. And the funniest one of all was against what he called aliens, extraterrestrials. That would be the final card. And over and over and over, during the 4 years that I knew him and was giving his speeches for him, he would bring up that last card and remember him. The last card.
The last card.
Build space-based weapons against aliens. All of them, he said, is a lie. All of them, he said, is a lie. The strap.
Now, it kind of makes you wonder, why is that the last card? Could they be saving it for the return of Jesus? And next up, we have photographic proof that satellites are not just floating in space. They are in the lower Earth orbit, and every single one of them is hanging by a giant helium balloon. NASA is the #1 consumer of helium in the world. Now, there can't be any other reason for that. And whenever a satellite falls, they try to hurry up and cover it up. But there have been photographs of satellites that have been on the ground and there are deflated balloons next to them. Google balloon. Nice ring, bro. Yeah. Walt Disney classics. Exactly. I have heard Buzz Aldrin multiple times say, "We didn't go, and that's why we can't go back." For telling them that they're being lied to, instead of being upset that they've been lied to. The programming is so deep that when you try to tell someone about the world that they live on and the nature of it, they don't even understand why someone would lie about that. And that's a problem. I can think of many reasons why they would want to lie to us about the fact that we're not on a plane and we're not actually on something that was created for us. It hits a little different than thinking that you're just this tiny little blip amongst all these giant, massive stars and things, and that you're just a tiny peon instead of actually the center of the universe. Apparently, there is new tech called artificial invisibility. And it, to me, sounds like something that could be used in very nefarious ways.
So we're calling it cloaking right now. Visible light, the wavelength of visible light is on the order of nanometers. Nanoparticles are on the right scale to sort of interact with that and manipulate. In principle, it's actually possible to get an object that will guide light around itself. Sphere is this sort of easiest shape to do. Right now we can only cloak convex shapes, and that has to do with the sharp angles. So things like spheres and even cylinders, for the most part, we can do a pretty good job with. Squares, we can do a halfway decent job with, and then when we get to things like triangles where they have the more acute angles, that's where it sort of bends the light in a problematic way. A lot of other research groups have tried to build three-dimensional structures that can do this sort of light guiding, but working with nanoparticles, we prefer to use self-assembly. And in turn, we prefer to use liquids because as the liquid dries, the particles can come together in a particular way. So by controlling the structure of the particles, we can control how they come together. Go ahead. Now, it's important to get the droplet size right since this is sort of a surface area effect, so that's why we're using this atomizer. Of course, it takes a while for the students to get the technique down. Things don't dry evenly, that adds to the distortion of the light. So we just chose to use a simple hair dryer, and and it also speeds things up for the demonstration. So what future uses do we envision for this paint? I mean, of course, beyond the general novelty of being able to move about undetected, I think there are going to be a lot of applications for this. So, of course, the military is very involved. Invisible buildings and invisible vehicles. We provide new ideas, and it's society that decides, how new technologies will be used. Because, of course, we envision this being used on the skin. We want everything to be safe. If this stuff gets onto the wrong hands, reverse engineered by people who wish to do harm. I mean, it sounds like a movie or something, but that's the kind of thing I think that keeps me up at night a little bit.
Did you hear what he said? Invisible buildings. Can you imagine? And if it's on television, do they already have it? Have they already had it? All right, our last video for today is not NASA related, but I found it interesting nonetheless. This man has a map from the 1500s, and it's interesting what is on this map.
All right, I'm gonna fuck y'all up with some shit on this one. All right, this is their Bano Monty map from 1587. Excuse me. North Pole. No ice. No ice around any of these areas, okay? There's North America, South America, Africa, India, Russia, China. Okay, so very similar to this map. North America, South America, Africa, India, China, Russia. Okay? Only thing different, Australia. There is no Australia here because it hasn't been discovered yet. This is 1587. Australia wasn't discovered until 1606. So that's why that's not there. But my main question is, if this is a globe flattened out and this is on the bottom, right? What the fuck is this?
Right.
There's no ice on it. And guess what? Antarctica hadn't been discovered yet. Antarctica was discovered in 1820. If you look, oh look, there's an alligator, there's a camel, warm weather animals. So, you want to explain to me, first thing, what the hell is this, all this land? And second thing, what froze them? What happened between 1587 and 1892 where those areas got frozen? All right.
Yeah. It's definitely strange that that map is from before they found Australia, and there is outer lands that are fertile on that map. Have you seen that map before? Let me know in the comments. But I want to thank you guys for joining me again. And until next time, stay prayed up and stay highly motivated.